You know, one of the things that I try to emphasize about the migrant crisis that we're currently experiencing here in the United States of America, and by the way, liberal cities like Chicago, Denver, New York City are really experiencing it for the first time since they're not places that border the nation of Mexico, is the fact that what are often sold to us as the more compassionate policies, the care harder policies, are anything but that. And recently there was a story that broke in New York City about how the police have to put together a task force, or maybe it's not only the police, it's other government agencies, in order to stop migrant children from selling snacks all over New York City and actually try to get them in school. Because even though our tax dollars are already strained, even though these people can't work and essentially the regular ordinary taxpayer has to cover the cost for them, now because they're being used to generate income selling snacks, there has to be additional tax dollars spent on them in order to try to get them in school, because in reality, in actuality, the promise of sanctuary and this ideal circumstance is not actually being met. Letting these children through, letting their families through, is leading to them selling snacks on the street in a desperate attempt for them to earn income. Now, we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
And remind you that on Saturday, April 27th, I will be in Austin, Texas at Mindsfest. Link to tickets, top of the description, promo code AJW for 20% off.
And good evening to you. I'm Christine Johnson. It is a heartbreaking sight that you've probably noticed in the city, and unfortunately it is a common one. Children selling snacks on the streets and subways instead of attending school. Is there a solution?
So the setup for this story is exactly what I told you. You have children that are not in school selling snacks on the street, and then there's this push, this idea that, is there even a solution? Is there something that we can do? And they asked the mayor about this, and of course the mayor is going to use this to push his agenda and talk about the task force that he's putting together in order to get these children off the streets and get them in school. Now, by the way, if you're a regular, ordinary American citizen and you pull your child out of public schools without the proper documentation to say that they're homeschooled or whatever, and you decide that you're going to put them to work, you would find yourself in jail. Yet these migrant parents, who by the way are defrauding the asylum system, a huge portion of them, are allowed to do so, and we have to care harder about them and spend more money that the taxpayers actually pay. They work hard in order to earn that money on this particular issue.
A concerned city councilwoman doesn't want this busy thoroughfare in the southwest part of Queens to become a boulevard of death for migrant children put on the street to sell food and drink.
It's 100% the safety of these children. They're 5, they're 6. They're getting bored, so they're making makeshift slides and using a 2x4 to slide directly onto Woodhaven Boulevard.
So right here you see photos and images, and here's the thing. I live in New York City, so I can tell you this is actually considered a very dangerous thoroughfare. In fact, there's a bunch of different cameras and whatnot that they've put up in response to multiple different accidents, and you have children as young as 5 and 6 that are standing out there trying to earn income for their family, which again should just go to show you that our immigration system, the compassionate promise of sanctuary, is anything but. Remember back during the Trump administration where the left was pushing the kids in cages narratives because the Trump administration was saying, hey, just because you're a child doesn't mean you can enter the United States of America. And this was pushed as the cruelest thing that you could possibly have. You had Ocasio-Cortez crying, dressed in all white with all these Congress people, even though it was reported that she was just looking at a parking lot and couldn't even see any kids from where she's doing all these poses. Well, the thing that I always got on the Trump administration for, even though, by the way, there were actually some officials that made this case, is that they never actually made the case for this policy. Because the alternative, when you say you're going to let kids into the United States, which is what was happening before, after Obama passed DACA or signed it via executive order, that got like mistranslated in Latin America, and all of a sudden we had these migrant child arrivals show up at the border because they thought they would get sanctuary, is that you actually ended up creating an incentive system for them to take that dangerous journey on their way to the United States, where many of them would get killed, abused, trafficked, or whatever, and that was completely unnecessary and unneeded, and a policy that on its surface might seem cruel will actually end up preventing more suffering in the long run, i.e. not having all these unaccompanied minors coming to the border. Well, we have a current situation right now where Joe Biden has asked people to flood to the border.
I would in fact make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
As we talked about, specifically in the Lake and Riley case, these people are incentivized to have sham marriages in order to make their cases more sympathetic. So they bring their kids so it looks more like a family situation. But the thing is, when they get here, they want to put their kids to work because back in their home country, their kids would be going to work. So now in the United States of America, a place where we don't allow child labor like this, especially at this young an age, these are not teenagers in a lot of cases, we have them standing in our major thoroughfares in our biggest city in the entire country, selling snacks on the street for money. And again, 5, 6 years old. If somebody wanted to hurt one of these kids, nobody's watching them, nobody's supervising them. They could just yank them right off the road into their car and we end up in a kidnapping situation. There's accidents that happen all the time in these areas. Even getting to these areas where you're crossing to these major thoroughfares that are not necessarily set up for pedestrian traffic because these are in and around the highways could be absolutely disastrous. And I don't want to see kids get injured or killed in these circumstances, but for some reason, because I want to stop this problem at its origin point, stop incentivizing people to skip through all these countries, bring their children in order to defraud our asylum system, I'm considered the cruel one. But look at the consequences of the policies that you say are not cruel, of your generous policies, of your welcoming ordinances, of your sanctuary cities. It's children selling snacks in order to make a living.
Councilwoman Joanne Ariola has been trying for well over a year to get the city to do something about the hordes of migrant kids of all ages sent into the subways or on busy street corners to sell candy and food instead of going to school.
Their truancy is not being addressed.
So here you have a city councilwoman who says she's been trying to address this issue for a year. She's trying to do something about this for 1 full year. And I just want you to think about that. Remember, there was a viral video that people were talking about where they said a migrant was being arrested for not having a vendor's license. And I don't know if people are aware of this, but as somebody who rides the New York City subway, or at least used to ride the New York City subway, that woman was not a new migrant or anything like that. She migrated from the Bronx. She's been selling churros in the subway for the longest time. She gets cracked down on because vendor's license. These kids are truant and they don't have vendor's licenses. Let me make that clear. This is not a licensed operation. They're 6 years old and nobody's cracking down on them. Nobody seems to be addressing this. And things actually get significantly worse because where are they getting the stuff is a question that people should be asking right now.
There's also the question of where are they getting these items to sell? When they're asked, they say someone comes from far away to give this to us. So they're also being exploited by people who are using them to sell their goods on the street.
So yeah, when they question these kids, when they ask them what the hell is going on, it's not even their parents that appear to be assigning them to this work. They say somebody comes from very far away in order to give them the stuff and collect the money from them. And in reality, that sounds like a criminal organization. And we're starting to discover a bunch of different organized criminals that are both incorporating the migrants into their operations and preying on the migrants in their operations. And this is all being allowed to happen because, oh my God, think about how sad the lives of the migrants are. But this is not a good life. They're in the subway system. We talked about how it's more dangerous than it has been in the previous 15 years in the last 4 years, at least in terms of homicides, people being pushed on the track and all of that. And we shouldn't be sending 5 and 6 year olds into the subway in order to make money for some shady criminal organization. But that's exactly what we're seeing going on right now. And by the way, these are cash transactions, if you guys are unaware of that. So if you're a robber or criminal or something like that, and you stumble upon a 4 or 5 year old or 6 year old with a wad of cash in his pocket, they're an easy target for other criminals. So this is chaotic. This is ridiculous. This should not be happening in our city. And I will remind you, if you're an adult and you let your vendor's license expire, they will come down on you with fire and fury. They will destroy your life. I mean, it's absolutely crazy what these people do. But all of a sudden, for migrant children, no laws apply. No rules applied. Migrant truant children, A-OK, first class all the way, rubber stamp.
The mayor has now appointed a multi-agency task force to go into shelters to convince parents to send their kids to school. I asked him about it at an unrelated event.
I saw that in Ecuador, I saw that in Mexico, I saw that in Colombia. So sometimes people bring their culture and how practices are done into the city, and we want to make sure that people understand children should be in school.
So honestly, I'm so sick of this. I'm tired of it. I hate hate every aspect of it. But Eric Adams says he put together a multi-agency task force to deal with this problem. But if you listen to how they're going to deal with the problem, it's to go into the shelters and convince people to send their kids to school. If your kids are truant, they don't go and try to convince you. They threaten you. They threaten to use the law enforcement against you. There's a program called PINS where they'll actually assign a truant officer to your kid that will make sure that they will get into class. But for the migrants, for the people who are defrauding the asylum system, they're like, we'll try to chat with them and explain to them the positive virtues of public education. We'll spend more tax dollars on these people who are living in taxpayer-funded shelters to send them to taxpayer-funded schools because we don't want to have the same consequences for them. If you don't want these migrant kids to be working in these vendor locations, how about this? You have a sanctuary city law that forbids the NYPD from working with ICE. You put your kid to work, we're going to have you deported. We're sending you back. And Eric Adams says, look, they're just importing aspects of their culture. Well, we're not trying to do that. We're not trying to import the negative aspects of their culture, the things that cause them to flee those places. We want them to assimilate to our culture. And what you need sometimes is not just carrots, not just positive incentives, but sticks. Negative incentives, consequences for those actions. But that seems to be so foreign in the city of New York, so we just have to spend endlessly on these particular issues. And Eric Adams can say whatever he wants, but the city councilwoman is right. They've been bringing up this issue for well over a year and nothing has changed. In fact, I think the problems have gotten worse. And by the way, I happen to need to stand up for the American panhandlers, the American snack holders, and the American highway people that I drive by immediately because they've been doing this hustle for a very long time and they're completely being outworked by these little migrant children. And that's because they have the energy of a children's, and that's because they are children's. They're kids. And I don't want good, hardworking American scammers in the subway selling snacks for charity that don't exist and on the highway to be struck down, to be shot down because of all these new imported childrens who again bring the energy that we can possibly never match in our entire lives because they're children. They're literally children. So they're taking the jobs of our scammers, and I want to form a scammers union in order to stand up for our scammers. Only American scammers that may be addicted to drugs should get our panhandler suckers money when you feel guilty or when they kind of trap you in a situation where they know you have cash on you and you have to give them something because your normal excuse is to say, I don't have any cash on me. I'm sorry, lady. I can't help. I would help you, but I just can't do it right now.
The city has been so generous to the asylum seekers, there's no need for their kids to work, the councilwoman says.
They're receiving debit cards now. They have lodging. They have free call centers. They have free medical care. They're getting free education. There is no need for migrants to now become part of the problem of illegal street vending.
Look, everything that the city councilwoman said is true. And by the way, absurd. These non-citizens, these people defrauding our asylum system in order to enter the country, going to New York specifically. I know people talk about Greg Abbott sending them to New York, but most of these people request to go to New York, and Abbott has nothing to do with it in order to take advantage of our benefits, are also not following our laws, are also running these side hustles. Again, they're hurting our good-hearted American scammers with their selling candy for fake charities. And they're doing this because, again, they don't have respect for our laws, and likely they are incorporated in some kind of criminal organization that appears to be taking advantage of the children. Remember, this is what your endless empathy actually results in. A more cruel, more horrible system that puts children to work right here in the United States of America, even though that is not the way that it should be. These people are given everything. They have all the generosity, Fifth Avenue hotels in New York City, and they're still doing this, and their parents are still sending them into the streets to earn money, and it's unacceptable. So yeah, maybe reconsider what you think is generosity. Maybe reconsider what you think is compassionate, because it may make you feel good, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing good. But hey, those are just my thoughts, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about migrant children going to work. Till next time.